All right, Judges 12, let's call this one Say Shibboleth and subtitle it Power. Why? Because I actually made a mistake was it 2 videos ago? I probably make plenty of mistakes, but I made one that caught my own attention. As I was preparing to publish the video for chapter number 8, I realized that Ephraim wasn't as heroic as I had originally thought they were. Part of the reason I didn't edit it is because I was really busy. But then another part was I kind of saw a value in leaving it there and addressing the error, because we've been talking about the sin of presumption. And so presumption can also affect our ability not only to see the negative in a situation, but sometimes to see people more heroically than they are. And so when I saw Ephraim willing to stand by Gideon in a time where there weren't a lot of people who were willing to stand by Gideon, I made too much of their character, because the same challenge they made to Gideon, why didn't you call us when you went to go fight? They're going to make to Jephthah in this last chapter that focuses on the story of Jephthah. And it's not going to go so well. Why? Because timing is going to be really important in life and in studying the word. So the first thing to understand is be careful of reading the word too fast. One of the good rules of thumb is, if you can, one of the things they taught us in preaching school was read the entire chapter to make sure you have a healthy context. And I already knew that Ephraim had kind of an up and down story, because by the time we get to the prophets, some of the prophets are going to have some harsh things to say about Ephraim. But I did not know that in the smaller context, their behavior was going to turn really quickly in a matter of chapters. And so now that we are in chapter 12, we're going to get a chance to see exactly how that same approach they used with Gideon is going to backfire with Jephthah. And let's look at it from a different perspective. We talked about in chapter 10 how I typically look at these things from a narrative perspective, but there we looked at it from more the perspective of the personalities involved to get a theme for practical application of what can we really do with this. But now I want to look at it thematically. I guess the second theme I want to look at beyond presumption is timing, understanding that Jephthah just lost his daughter after having himself spoken presumptuously. This is a time that reminds us in life, even when we aren't necessarily concerned about the feelings of others, that does not mean that God is not concerned about the feelings of others. And even though Jephthah made a mistake, that did not make him a wicked man. To the contrary, the consistent theme that we seem to see in his life is that of a man who cares about righteousness. Why? Because righteousness can be our second theme. When they come at him, challenging him on why he didn't invite them to the battle, he is going to simply appeal to reason. He's going to ask them, why are you contending with me? I asked you for help, and when I didn't get an answer, I simply went on the strength that God provided. God delivered the Ammonites into my hand. So why do you want to fight now? And in the fight with the Ammonites, we saw Jephthah engage in a protracted back and forth, attempting to reason with them from history to understand why the claim that they were making wasn't fair. Timing is really important, because this time there's not a whole lot of back and forth. Jephthah just straps it on and goes to war. And once again, God delivers, this time, his own brethren into his hands as he kills 42,000, or his men kill 42,000 of Ephraim's soldiers. It's leading us to the final theme we want to look at, and that is watch your mouth. Because the whole title, Say Shibboleth, comes from the test that Jephthah's soldiers apply to the Ephraimites as they're trying to make their way back home in anonymity, pretending like they weren't the ones over there starting trouble. They're going to ask the men to say Shibboleth, understanding they're probably going to mispronounce it. And as they mispronounce the words, they take them aside and deal with them, executing the soldiers that had come to make war in Gilead. And so understand that that's three things: being careful of presumption, being cautious of timing, and understanding that righteousness is something that God cares about. And one of the reasons we so often emphasize the importance of understanding the things that matter to God is in a difficult situation. When you're praying to God for help, it's important to understand the things that he is willing to bless. And here, Ephraim is fighting in their own power, presumably for things of their own interest. Whereas, once again, Jephthah is appealing to reason and asking folks to consider, is this the right thing to actually fight for? So just as Ephraim, quite possibly intoxicated on their own power, allowed their power to encourage their mouth to enter into a fight that honestly probably had more to do with their own interest as opposed to God's interest. Their mouth ended up being the same thing that got them ensnared as they tried to escape a fight they never should have been in the first place. And so understand that even though this battle results in Israelites killing 42,000 of their own brethren, once again, these stories often end with the hope of redemption, because we're going to see three judges at the end of this chapter before it goes into the story of Samson. And the last of those three judges seems like he might have come from the tribe of Ephraim. So even though they were presumptuous, they still can stand as an example for the ways in which God is giving us an opportunity to redeem ourselves if we aren't trying to do it on our own terms, which is why we often say God's best to you as you go forward in him.